Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
So in today's episode, ladies, we have Kim Kiyosaki. She is an internationally recognized author, speaker, investor, and she is one of the founders of the Rich Dad Company. We are so excited to have her on, and we covered so much on today's episode, right, Jessa? Yeah. And I think what you're going to really appreciate most is she is so down to earth, so real, so authentic. We go from tips and strategies from an investing perspective to the advantages women bring to investing. And then we talk so much and weave through so much around mindset and self-care.
Yeah, we talked about women, how important women are in investment and being financially free and having that money story, let go of that. And one thing that she shared, and I thought was one of the highlights of this episode, is what is the lesson that it's taking her the longest to learn. And you won't believe what she said, what it is. You might think, oh, I'm not hearing this from Kim, but I'm not going to share that with you. You got to enjoy this episode over here because it's full of real estate investment, business strategies, and also mindset. This is packed. This is a must watch, must listen episode.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show, where we are incredibly committed to empowering women to live a financially free and balanced life, right, Andressa?
Whatever balance means to you. Don't forget that. That's important. Yes, don't
forget. We have an incredibly special guest on our show today, Kim Kiyosaki. Thank you so much for being on our show, and thank you for being here to, share your amazing wisdom with the women in our community and that follow our show.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Andressa. Thank you for having me. And I really applaud the work that you're doing to educate women. It's so important, especially today.
Yes, and that's one of the many things we want to get into with you here in a moment. Really excited to get your insight into. Andressa and I, as we always do for the women listening and watching, I just want to quickly connect with all of you amazing women out there. And so, Andressa, what do you have going on here today?
Well, my son, he's now 6 years old. And he has been going to Montessori school since he was 2, but he was like a baby-ish structure before. And now that he's 6, he's in first grade. And because of COVID, I didn't get a chance to really go and see the interactions. And this past couple of weeks, I went there for the first time. I got opportunity to see what's going on and observe for 15 minutes. And I need to be honest, although I made a conscious decision about putting him into Montessori methodology school, I was shocked. I was really shocked to see the structure. So they have first, second, and third grade at the same time. So they start teaching leadership since that time. They were all doing different things. Some of them were sitting on their desk, others were not. They have like this carpet that they can lay down over there and do their work. My son was building something. I have no clue what he was building there, while other kids were doing math, rocks, art, different things going on at the same time. And I was like, what's going on? Right? It's like, although it was very diverse, there was no chaos. And I was having a conversation with the teacher where the focus is on their strengths. They pick their schedule, and there's different ways of completing the same task. And then I was like, oh my gosh. One side, I was like very proud to be giving him this opportunity. On the other side, I look back and I was like, I remember me going to school for years and years and looking at a teacher, a professor in front of me that had the knowledge that was spread out across the board. I didn't get a chance to either say, I'm not into physics, or I love biology, or whatever that might be. And there was just like right or wrong answers. I couldn't raise my hand because that was like, oh, so you didn't understand? Is that why you're asking for help. And a lot of that stuff, right? And the worst thing for me was the grades. My success was based on grades and not my own success, right? What I was getting out of it. So a lot of that stuff, although I'm very, very grateful for the education that I had, a lot of those unconscious ways of being, I transferred to real estate. And even after many, many years, I'm still unlearning a lot of those patterns. And all for the experienced women in real estate that are listening right now, that are dealing with similar situations, pivoting to another exit strategy and not comfortable doing that, not confident doing that because you're trying to do what? Have the right choice. For all of you that are scaling your business, you've got to surround yourself with other like-minded women so you can hash it out, get the support that you need, get the mentorship that you need to take your business to the next level. Real estate, in my opinion, it's not a solo act. It's a teamwork. And that's really why Liz and I put our Strive membership together to really cater real estate investors, investing business strategies, and also self-care, which is super important. So today is December 10th. If you're listening to this, our doors are open until December 13th. So check it out, therealestateinvestor.com/membership. And if you're listening to this after this date, check out our waiting list. The link is on our show notes. I hope you check what we have put together because it's to really empower you to take your business to the next level while living life on your own terms.
Yes, that's great. And I love that idea of unlearning, right? And I know, Kim, you shared so much in the work you've done around, education. So hopefully we'll get to some of those questions today. And we have so many prepared for you.
Well, Krista brought up some great points. a lot of what we have to do is unlearn, but also you brought up mentorship and teamwork, all vital for success.
Yeah, no,
absolutely. Nice summary, Dressa. Nice summary. I like it.
We're trying to do our best, Kim.
You're doing great. So we always kind of kick things off, Kim, for our guests. What propelled you? What motivated you to begin investing in real estate? Well, I knew nothing about real estate, as a lot of women are in the same situation. I knew nothing. We were building our business, was still getting off the ground. And Robert kept talking about what his rich dad taught him about investing and specifically about real estate. And he talked to me a little bit and he goes, go see what you can find. And I'm like, excuse me, do what? And we were living in Portland, Oregon at the time. And so I'm just driving around neighborhoods. I'm on my bicycle. I don't even know what I'm looking for, but I found this really cute little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, just blocks from where we were living, and brought in a realtor. And long story short, it was $45,000. I had to come up with a $5,000 down payment, which we did not have. And I think, like most people, as you were saying, addressed that getting comfortable, I was very uncomfortable. And I have a saying that you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable in order to grow. And so I was very uncomfortable. I was looking for every reason possible, every excuse possible why this is not a good deal. What if the tenant moves out, and what if I missed something and the pipes break, or what if the roof leaks, and all of this drama and all of these excuses to not do this real estate deal. And I finally came down at it. It was face to face with me, nothing else, no one else. Finally came up with that $5,000, did that deal. And every month after I collected the rent and paid the mortgage, paid the expenses, I had a big old $25 positive cash flow every month. And that's how I started. And that formula, Liz and Adressa, that formula of income, less expense, less debt, cash flow is the formula for real estate. It's a simple formula. It's the same formula I use today on 200-300 unit apartment buildings. It's the same formula. It's not rocket science, but it's getting over that fear of that first deal. Had I not, who knows where I would be today.
Well, years ago in 2011, when I got started, I I started doing the Rich Dad courses. That's how I
Oh, great.
learned everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yes,
Good to know.
absolutely. And one of the amazing mentors there that really what they taught me, I paid for my education and all my mistakes, and I would do it all over again. But one thing that really motivated me is that I heard from one of them, the concept of your first deal. How important is your first deal? The longer you take to
Yes.
avoid that, longer it is that you're actually not gonna pull the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So I said I refuse. I refuse to come to those events, stand up and say, well, I started a year ago, 2 years ago, and I am getting ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So I,
Yes.
I really refused that. And we really had very specific actions in order to do that. One thing that we hear a lot, right? I don't have the money to get started. And as you mentioned, you didn't have the 5,000 to put down. What needs to change from the is it a mindset, or for all of the people that are listening right now that are getting started, or for the experienced investors that are looking to invest in apartment complexes, but they're like, how? I also don't have, or scale. I don't have the money. The money is always a quote unquote an excuse why they're not either getting started, scaling, or pivoting. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what you were also talking about in that first deal, and you mentioned it earlier in the show, is surrounding yourself with like-minded people, especially like-minded women. That makes such a difference, because to have that support base, these people will have probably a lot of them have gone through what you're going through, or they have the same questions. So much easier than doing it on your own. I did it on my own, and it was harder because I had to deal with this. There's enough negativity going on with other people telling me I can't do it. But when I'm telling myself I can't do it, it's really helpful to have that support group. So like-minded people are crucial. In terms of not having the money, never, 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 ever let the excuse, I don't have the money, stop you from doing a good real estate deal. Never. I always say, find the deal first. Go find it, go touch it, go smell it, go walk around it, because then it becomes real. Up until then, it's just theory. It's just like, oh yeah, someday, and someday never comes. Someday when I have the money. Well, you never have the money, because something comes up and you're always going to spend it on this or that. So find the deal first, make it real, get excited about it. And then for me, I did not have the money for the first 10 deals I did, maybe more. But what it forced me to do, it forced me to get very, very creative and find different ways to find the money. So for example, for a second, something just popped up. There we go. So for example, for that first deal, we're like, how are we gonna get this done? And I was so excited about the property, and it just made sense. And so basically how we got the first $5,000 is we had our business. This was before Rich Dad. We had another business before that, and it was education. So we created a little ad, sent it out to our community, and said, we have this tape product called such and such, and you can pre-order it. And so we had all these pre-orders, and the pre-orders all came in, and that's how we got our first $5,000. And then of course we had to make good, and we had to create the product and send it out on time. But that's how we did it. So not having the money can be a great benefit, because it forces you to think, it forces you to get creative. And so now today, even though most of our money is invested, so when a good opportunity comes up, we often don't have the money. And we put all of those experiences and that creativity to work to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this deal happen? So it's a benefit to not have the money, I think.
It sounds like it also benefited your other business.
It
So
did, absolutely.
yeah, so that's super fascinating, right? So you're building two pieces. You're actually building a product for your business and getting the revenue too. That's
exactly.
It's great. So in the 5,000, where the 5,000 actually, did that come from? This strategy was
from the sale. That came from the sale of our pre-sale of our products.
the same. Okay, gotcha. That's really cool. So Kim, I want to also ask. We have to ask about what's happening in the not get into the political arena or get into the economic landscape of what's going on. But, that's swarming a lot of people right now. It's a very hot market, both for small deals, large deals, competitive, right? Even in the onset of COVID and what have you. So really would love to get your, get your insight into like, where do you see opportunities? How do women, make the most of this current market? Because there's always opportunities to be had. I don't care if it's a downturn, upturn, or whatever turns going on, there's always opportunity. But
Right.
most people, or even women who are experienced, may not always see those opportunities. So I'm curious to get your insight with the looming, what's happening out there
Yeah,
politically,
that's a great
economically.
question. Yeah, great question, because there's so much uncertainty out there and there's so much, we don't know what's coming down the road tomorrow. But we're just for the record, we're buying real estate. We've just bought 2 properties in the last 6 months, and we're working on we're developing a senior housing project right now as well. Now, we all know that what's happening with the migration, people are moving out of states that are very restrictive and they're moving to the states that are more open. Arizona is filled with Californians. We're also have a place in South Carolina, a lot of people moving to South Carolina, Florida, Texas. So those markets are so hot. But I'm going to tell you another little funny story. When you talk about opportunities, we had a condo in Portland, Oregon, and it was a friend of ours had done a development. So we got this condo and we just been sitting on it for years and years. We're like, well, we don't like what's happening up in Portland. This is this year. We don't like what's happening in Portland. Let's sell it. And we'll probably have to take a loss because of all of the disruption that's happening there. There's a lot of homelessness and there's still the fighting going on and violence and things like that. I called the broker and I said, we're probably going to have to take a loss on this, but we just want to get rid of it and move it to something else. And she said, the Portland market is on fire. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, people aren't moving in, but people are moving up. And one of the trends today you'll see is do it yourself. A lot of home remodel, a lot of put money into your house. So some people aren't relocating, but they're moving up or they want a better place. So we look at, the like Phoenix market is at an all-time high, yet compared to other parts of the world, it's still relatively inexpensive. So even though the markets may be high, there's still, as you say, Liz, there's always opportunities. And so we're always looking.
I love that perspective. I love that perspective. Moving in, but instead of moving in, moving up. That's a great perspective. I guess I cut you off.
No worries. I was just, there's a lot of speculation right now about where the market is going. We're going to have a recession coming up. Do you believe that there are quote unquote, recession proof real estate niches that will ride the wave and no problem?
All depends on what laws get passed. But what we've always done, and I still think it's a good strategy today, we've always done, you have your A class properties, which are your high end, then your B class, and then your C class, which is low end. We've always focused on the B class, because if a recession hits, if there's a downturn, the first place people move out of is the high end into the lower end. So we've always focused, and we didn't want to get into the C because that's always a lot of work and a lot of more maintenance oftentimes and a lot more headaches. So we focused on the B, and that's played out very well for us when they did the rent moratorium and people didn't have to pay rent. We have great teams, and they worked with our tenants. I think the lowest we ever got to was maybe 89% paid. So there's always, you've got to, even if it's a single family house, it's a business. Every property is a business, and you've got to treat it like a business. And as long as you're actively involved and you know what's going on, or you have access to the team, that's really, really important. And then, you look at the trends that are happening. Delivery, everybody wants delivery. So maybe warehousing is an opportunity. As I mentioned before, we're in a senior housing project right now that we're developing, because that hasn't changed. These baby boomers, they're aging, they're going to need housing. So some things have changed, but some have not. I was driving down our main road yesterday, and I go by our U-Haul dealer, and there's tons of U-Haul trucks in there, meaning people have moved in It's like little, just watch the little things happening in your neighborhood. FedEx trucks everywhere, UPS trucks everywhere. Everybody wants delivery. So you don't have to go to macroeconomics to figure out the trends. Just look in your own backyard.
I love that. And when we look at, the real estate cycle, and there's a lot of speculations again regarding the upcoming crash.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's not like it's when that's going to happen? What are your thoughts on that?
It seems like there has got to be a downturn. There has to be. This cannot sustain. It's already, from what I'm seeing and hearing, it's already starting to slow a bit. And then also what happens when people have run out of their savings or all that money they were given from the government, and all of a sudden maybe they can't pay their mortgage because they're out of work. They've been laid off, or they've chosen not to, or because of vaccines, whatever happened. It just seems that logically, it seems that there's going to be a lot of properties coming available. That's what I think. Now, that could change tomorrow, but that's kind of where we are. However, I say that, but I don't say wait until that comes, because then you may be waiting forever. And Liz, as you said, there's always an opportunity in every city. You just got to know what to look for. And you really got to be smart about it. You got to be a little smarter today than when I started back in 1989. It was a little easier back then.
Well, even like during COVID, right? I mean, talk about something that was unprecedented, that no one even saw coming.
Yeah.
We bought our largest asset to date, like June of COVID. And, because you start to think, wow, that's really risky. But is it risky? When two of the buyers fell off, we were the third bidder, and they took our bid, and we won the deal because the other two couldn't pull it together during that time. That's in a top performing a lot of our assets, so it's doing great. My point in saying that is we have to be mindful of like listening to too many voices out there that don't have the experience, right? That aren't in the arena of investing. Had we like polled our family and friends, they would have been like, you're crazy. But we didn't poll them. We don't ask them those things. We did actually ask people in our circles and groups that we're a part of, and, just to kind of get like, where are you? Like, yeah, we're making offers, and that's an amazing deal. And just to kind of run it by people, it's a larger asset. So I just say that because watch who you listen to, right?
Well, that's a great point, Liz, because there's a lot of, we talk about real teachers versus fake teachers. So a real teacher, Liz, you're a real teacher. Adressa, you're a real teacher because you are teaching people what you are doing. You're out there doing it every day with real estate and all, and business. But then there's fake teachers, and these are people that are going to tell you what to do, but they've never done it. A lot of times they're called real estate brokers or financial advisors, but they're not actually doing what it is. And so it's a really important point you make, Liz, is that you want to be around people who are like in your circle, as you say, who are out there doing it, who are doing the real thing, because they're going to have the ones that have the most experience and most knowledge, not somebody who's sitting back telling you what to do, although they don't do it themselves.
Yeah.
You want to learn from real teachers. So be really careful, the listeners today, be really careful who you're taking your advice from, and really check it out. Don't even take my advice. Just check it out yourself and really do your homework, do your due diligence.
Love that. And it's such an important part too, when you're partnering with people, right? Too, in obviously building teams, doing deals, but then partnerships. And we're actually finishing up this week a 3-day live, educational event we did on partnerships. And it's such an important piece. Yeah. When you start to scale, you can't do it all yourself. What you could have done with a fourplex is a little different, right? On 100 unit or larger, or something bigger and different. So love to get your insight into what because I'm sure you've experienced on business partnerships, real estate partnerships, all kinds of partnerships in your career. So tell us about some of your, best partnerships. What were those qualities of your best partnerships versus the ones that didn't work out?
I'm also interested on the worst ones. I want to know what you're talking
those are more
about.
Fun.
The worst and the best have one thing in common, is that it's called being aligned to the mission. And the worst talk about it. Oh yeah, I'm on board. I'm on the mission. Mission of the Rich Dad Company to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. Yes, I'm on board. But when it comes to what are the actions and what are the behavior, very different. So the best partners, same thing. They are totally aligned to the mission. We are on the same page, moving down the road together. So that's one thing. If you're going to take on a partner, make sure that you and that partner have the same mission, the same values, the same goals. It's so, so, so important. But I'll tell you a story that you reminded me of, Liz, when you were talking about, you can only have so many properties. So I, at the time, had 2 apartment buildings and about 8 single family homes. And I had on-site managers for a couple of properties. I guess I had about 50 altogether, 50 units altogether. And I was self-managing as well. And I couldn't manage anymore. I had no more time because I had the business and plus all the property. And I'm like, oh, so I stopped looking for property for like almost 2 years. And then we met our partner, Ken McElroy. You talk about a great partner. This is a great partner. He's also a Rich Dad advisor, and he's our real estate investment partner. And we start talking. He has the exact same formula for cash flowing properties as we do. And he's managing property at that time. He was a property manager. And I'm like, oh, great. Thank you. Could you please manage my properties? And he said, no. And I'm like, excuse me. And he said, I cannot. I'm like, why not? He goes, your properties are too small. He goes, I only manage properties of 120 units or more. And I'm like, oh. So of course that inspired me to work with him to find a 120 unit building, of which we did. And then we've been investment partners, Robert and I, with Kenny and his partner for many, many, many years.
I love those partners that say no to us, that don't agree to everything that we say. Because
exactly.
Right, that they are really being who they are, true to themselves, know what they bring to the table. Yep. And that I respect that a lot.
I do too.
Right, it's just amazing. You mentioned about the cash flow formula before, but I want to dissect it a little bit. There are 4 steps you said for your cash flow. Would you mind going down that, because I think it's important for everybody that are listening to get the recipe, quote unquote, the recipe, the formula that can be duplicated across the board. So if you could dissect that would be great.
The partners, if they're all agreeing, there's a saying that if you and your partner agree on everything, then one of you is unnecessary.
Oh. Okay, I hashtag that.
So the formula is very simple. And before I get there, 2 of the key things that you want to make sure of where you're investing is you want to make sure that there's jobs. And that's an interesting issue today, given people being laid off and the whole vaccine mandates and all of that. But you want to be where there's jobs and where the economy is going up. You don't want to invest. I don't want to invest in an economy going down, because I don't know how down it's going to go. And if the economy is going down, people are going to move out to other places. Number one. So I just wanted to make that point. But the formula is very simple. You start with income. Okay. You have your rent income, less your expenses, your upkeep, your lawn, your utilities, all of that, less your expenses. That gives you your net operating income, NOI. So income minus expense, net operating income, NOI. The reason NOI is so important and why you want to focus on NOI is because that's what the banks loan you money on. They want to know what your NOI is. That determines how much money they're going to give you for your mortgage. So NOI. So then you have, after NOI, you have less your debt, less your mortgage payment on the property, and that equals cash flow. That's the formula. That's a formula on a single family house. That's a formula on a 500 unit apartment building. It's the same formula. And it's very simple. But the key is on income. Everybody says, well, you want to figure out how do you raise your income? How can you increase your income? It could be what we call value add. We always look for a property that is not well managed, is in disrepair, where we can take it or we can build onto it. So somewhere that we can improve the value of the property. And if you improve the value, then you can raise the rents. When it comes to expenses, most people say, oh, how can I cut expenses? And I think that's the wrong question. I think a better question is, how can I spend money most effectively to increase the value of the property? I have no problem spending money as long as it increases my NOI. And then debt, of course, the question to ask on debt is, how do I get the best terms? And that's always a negotiation. But that's the formula. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. Some people want to overcomplicate it. I like to keep it very, very simple. Sometimes the more I know, the more complicated it gets. Had I known everything I know today about real estate, I probably never would have bought that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. So sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is absolutely bliss for me as well. Some of the things you get involved with, especially when my husband and I got started, and the buildings we bought, and just like, well, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, what were we thinking?
Yes.
And I think about that now, but I'm like, it really serves, every decision serves us in some way.
Absolutely.
And every move makes us a better person if we allow it to, of course.
Yeah.
And we're not making those same mistakes.
Our mistakes are how we're designed to grow and learn. Yeah.
We make new mistakes now.
So. Some of the biggest mistakes I've made have been the best learning lessons ever. Yeah.
What's been one of those for you, Kim?
Well, I write about one of them in my book, Rich Woman. And I write about this one. I won't go into all the details, but the bottom line is I lost a big deal because of my own fear, of my own fear of making mistakes, of losing money, of all of that. And so I spent months negotiating with the seller, and he finally said, this is too difficult. I mean, I brought in attorneys. It was a mess. I was scared because it was a big deal. And so when I lost that deal, I started blaming everybody else. And then when I looked at it, I'm like, no, it was my own fear that stopped me from moving forward. And so I happened to have on my desk, a friend of mine had sent over a similar property that I was in Phoenix. This property that just fell out was in Florida. So I was flying back and forth on top of it. Well, this deal was almost identical, but it was 2 blocks from my house. It was less money. It was better cash flow. And because of all of the learning I had done, the due diligence I had done, I called this broker and basically said, is it available? And he said, they never listed it, but they'll entertain an offer. And I said, I know a lot about this property. I said, give them. Oh, and then on top of it, I said, what are they asking? He said, 7.2 million. I said, what's it worth? He said, 7.5. I said, good. I said, give them full price and we'll close in 30 days. And he's like, you can't close in 30 days. You can't do that. I'm like, oh, yes, we can, because I'm really pissed off at myself right now.
That's my motivation. I'm pissed off at myself.
Yeah. And to what, as you said, Liz, about the property you bought in COVID, this was 2002, I think. To this day, it's still one of our best performing properties. It's where we're developing now. It was a fitness club, and now we're developing a senior housing. So mistakes, you got the mistakes are the most valuable thing. Never lose sight of a good mistake.
There's a quick follow-up there too, Kim. I mean, fear is real. We all have it. It's not like this thing that once you get a lot of experience, you just like, oh, I'm good. I don't ever feel fear in any situation. It's still something that comes up. So do you have a certain practice? Like, how do you move through things knowing that happened? And obviously that served you to say, oh, that's not going to happen again. Do you do any sort of like habit? Is there a habit that you have, or I don't know, something that you do to make sure that that doesn't limit you again in another situation? Just curious how you manage your own fear.
Yeah, well, and I mentioned it in your opening. You talked about, I forget the word you use, self-care. So I do a lot of work on this. I do a lot of personal development. I think that's the key for me. Every morning I'm reading from one of my spiritual books. I'm journaling. I do some meditation. But I got to keep this under control. I have also a coach who helps me with this. I have a coach for real estate. I have a coach for business. I have a coach for fitness, and I have a coach for this. Because I don't want that to stop me. And to your point, Liz, if you're growing and you're taking on bigger projects, there's going to be fear, because there's a lot of unknowns that you're going to be stepping into. And I think that's the fear of the unknown, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of losing money. So I do everything possible to get this under control as much as possible. And I also surround myself with people much smarter than me, who I trust. That's a key piece, who you trust. Because I know a lot of smart people, and some people I trusted and didn't work out so well. So I really want to surround myself with people that are smarter than me that I trust. And we have a team of Rich Dad advisors at the Rich Dad Company. And they are our personal advisors as well on real estate, stocks, taxes, legal. So I trust every one of them explicitly, but it's a key point.
Great.
I wanna segue about the success, right? Because it's not many people might just see the success and not the work that goes behind the scene,
A lot of
and
work.
they might compare their life with other people's Instagram accounts. So it might be
Don't do
complicated.
that.
But
Do not do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Do not do that.
you mentioned two key things that people can do right now to accelerate their financial success, and I'm curious to see what are like those two things that people can do right now in order to take them forward, move them
Yeah.
forward.
Well, watching your program and watching programs like this that you're learning from real teachers who are out there in the real estate world doing what it is you want to be doing. In the background here is our board game Cash Flow. We always recommend that. That's something near and dear to my heart. That's the very first product Robert and I came out with before Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it teaches you want to learn the language, and that's not just on the board game, but you want to learn the language of money. You want to learn the strategies behind real estate. So step number one is to get some education from trusted sources. And so we created the cash flow game because it's basically the steps that Robert and I took to go from the rat race to becoming financially free. And it's like people wanted to know how we did it. And we're like, well, we can't travel all over the world teaching people what we did. So we created a board game that can travel all over the world, and people can teach each other, and families can play together, teach their kids, and groups. We have cash flow clubs all over the world. People get together on a regular basis. So that's one thing. Another thing is, once you get a little education, then put some money down. I mean, that for me is the fastest way to learn. Put a little, you can go out. I often say, go out and buy a 1 ounce silver coin today. It'll cost you about, I don't know, $28 today. But by buying it, or a few shares of stock, or even if you're up to a small piece of property, once you put some money down, even if it's $10, you're going to get interested in whatever it is you purchased, and you're going to start learning about it more. You're going to go online, you're going to read about it. If it's silver, how come the price is up, what's down? You're going to learn about more precious metals. But I always say, put a little money into it, because then it becomes more real. And I think anybody could do that. Any woman today could just go out and buy a 1 ounce silver coin, go buy a few shares of a stock that you personally are invested in terms of, it's something that you're doing something with. But those are a couple of things.
Love that. It's like skin in the game, right? And it's not until I think everyone's looking for the perfect deal. They're looking for the home run. And I always say, like, take a single. Just go and, what's such a bad analogy with baseball, but
it's good. It's a good one. Yes.
Like the walk, you don't take a walk, but you walk, whatever.
Walk a player. No, to your point. So we're good friends with, his name is Ryan Sandberg. He was a baseball player for the Cubs.
Okay.
And got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and in his Hall of Fame talk, and he had all of the heroes there, Yogi Berra and all of those guys. Mickey Mantle, everybody was, well, he wasn't there, but others were there. But in his speech, he said, the problem with baseball today is that everybody wants to hit it for the fences. They all want to go for the home run, where what's needed is to get your guy to first base.
Yep.
And that's it. And people, it's a great point, Liz, because you just start small. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you want to start with a little property, not a big property. You want to make those mistakes and learn. I learned so much on that first property, and then I take it to the next property. But start small, because make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and keep growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in reading Rich Woman, and we know your commitment to empowering women, which quite honestly has truly inspired Andres and I, long before we started the investor community. So thank you for that. I really just thank you for taking such a stand. We're really curious, like, what propelled you? Like, why are you so committed yourself to making sure women are financially free? I'm curious, what's that fire in you why is it so important to you to see women financially free?
Yeah, it wasn't something I set out to do. when we had the Rich Dad Company, I grew up as the youngest of three girls. So I was always taught that gender has no place in success. Gender is not a factor of success. So I never had the male female thing at all. I was taught to go for my dreams. I had a great parents. But when we had the Rich Dad Company, and Robert and I would travel all over the world, and we'd be teaching about the Rich Dad principles and philosophies. And I would get up on stage and I would just spend like 5 minutes talking to women about their financial situation. And after the program, I'd be outside, and I would always, no matter what city in the world it was, I'd be surrounded by women. And I realized that they had the same issues, the same questions. And I think the biggest issue of all is that what I saw is that nobody really had any financial education, male or female, but women were actually taught to depend upon somebody else for their financial well-being. Marry the good provider, make sure that, is he, what's the word I want to use? Doesn't matter, but we were taught, even in Cinderella and all of that, marry Prince Charming and all of this. So we're actually taught not to depend upon ourselves financially, but depend upon a husband or family member or even the government. And what I then started digging into some of the statistics, and the statistics tell us that due to loss of a job, due to divorce, due to death of a spouse, due to poor money management, women were finding themselves in horrific financial situations. The divorce happens, and his standard of living in a divorce goes up, hers goes down. He passes away. She has no idea where her money is or what she's got. And somebody comes to help her. Mr. Helper comes to financially help her out. And next thing you know, she's broke. So my eyes opened up to the need for women, and talking to all these women all over the world with the same issues, same questions, just woke me up to the need for financial education for women. And it's fun. It's fun to get together with groups. And I haven't done live seminars since COVID, except, I've done one. But it's fun to get together with women who are excited about learning, like-minded. They have the same dreams and aspirations. And they are, because they haven't been expected to know about money, they are so eager to learn. And I think that's actually one of the advantages for women, is that because we don't expect it, we don't pretend we know anything about it, and we're very curious, and we're good learners. The women investors I know, and I'm sure in your world too, they're smart, they're successful, they know how to run properties.
Absolutely. They're all under the radar.
Yes.
And we're interviewing all the women so far. When we started, we heard that we will run out of women to interview on our podcast. And I guarantee you guys, no, we still have a lot. But I want to talk about the advantages. On your book, Rich Women, you talk about the 8 advantage that women have as investors.
Yes.
So if you could talk about that portion, because I want all the women that are listening to focus on what we bring to the table and not what we lack of.
Yeah, no, as I said, women are great when it comes to investing. I think one of the advantages, which I mentioned, is because we haven't been taught about money, we don't pretend to know something, and we ask a lot of questions. If you go out with a real estate broker, an investment broker, I've done this before, and they start throwing out all this jargon, a cap rate. Oh, everybody's talking about cap rates. Okay, what's a cap rate? Can you explain what a cap rate is? Well, the higher the cap rate, the better the deal. I'm like, yeah, but how do you calculate a cap rate? And nobody can tell me. I know, because I studied it and I looked it up, but the brokers can't tell you, but they want to throw out all this jargon, and there's so much out there that, so we as women, if we haven't had the education, we're just curious. We want to know. They've done studies also, and this is important for today. They've done studies that have found that in a crisis or in a setback, women are actually more resilient. They will take action quicker, where oftentimes the men are wanting things to go back to the way they were. And I've seen this unfolding in the last year or so, even more so. So that's a big one for women, especially today, given that a lot of women might be in what's the word I want to use? Well, they might be in a crisis. They might be in an emergency. And the root word of emergency is emerge. So it could be a great opportunity for a woman if she's in an emergency to emerge, to start doing things differently. I think that could be key for women too. The last thing I would say is that in general, women are nurturers. They want to see their properties grow. They want to see their properties do well. They want to make sure their tenants are taken care of. And all that does is improve the quality of your property. And if a tenant loves being there, they're going to recommend their friends come stay there too. So I think there's just a lot of great advantages women have. And I'm not saying, who's better, men or women, at investing. It's because the markets don't really care if you're male or female. They just care about how smart you are with your money.
Yep.
But I think women do bring a whole lot to the table. And they don't also, the last thing I'll say is, I don't see a lot of women with really big egos buying properties for status. We buy properties for cash flow, and we want that bottom line to be pretty. We don't care about if it's the prettiest, the prettiest contestant in the beauty contest. We don't care.
We always joke, Kim, because you go to these events and you meet people, and everyone's got different questions when you're meeting people, but we often say, like, people come up to you like, how many doors do you own? Where do you own? Like, just specific questions, right? And I'm like, most of the time I don't get those questions from women. They're just like, what are you involved in? Like, it's just more, and there's a time to, and listen, there's a time that I understand myself and my own accomplishments and my own worth, right? And there's a time not to do that, of course, but there's another time to just like connect with people and not drill them on how many doors they own, because like, what does that really matter? You can own a lot of doors and not be making any money. Exactly. So I just, leading from ego is not something that, a lot of women do. In the same vein of the advantages that women have, we have so many women in our community that invest with their spouse and build businesses with their spouse. My husband and I, within the same year of starting our venture, which reading Rich Dad Poor Dad got us going, started investing together, building a business, getting married, and investing literally all in the same year. And that was 16 years ago, right? And so I always often talk that, the road could be rocky, and, a lot of women in our community want to, have a lot of different scenarios in their life: single, married, separated, every scenario. So I'd love to get your insight and your wisdom for, couples that are separating, that have successful businesses together. I really would love to get, your thoughts on that, because there's possibilities to do a lot of different things, right? There's no like, well, if this happens, it means this. Well, we're not in that world. Justin and I don't even play there, because there's possibilities endless if everyone's willing to go there. So I'm curious to get your insight there.
Yeah. Well, as I spoke about earlier, you've got real teachers and you got fake teachers. So I can only speak about separation because Robert and I are separated, and we've been separated for a couple of years now. A lot of people don't know that, but, and it's tricky because we have ended the marriage partnership, but we still have the business partnership. We have all the investments together. And it's very tricky. It takes a lot of communication, and it takes the separation has got, and this is what we both worked on, has got to be amicable. It's got to be healthy. If you're at war with each other, I don't know how you could remain business partners if you're not on the same page and you're not speaking to each other. Because it takes a lot of communication. When we go out of communication, that's when blow-ups happen. That's when upsets happen, is because we're not talking. So it's very tricky. It's kind of walking a tightrope, because, one part of your life has changed dramatically. And so it changes the dynamic of your partnership. It changes. So Robert and our partnership in our business, it's different than it was when we were married. And our investments are pretty much the same because we have a great team that we work with, but the business is day to day for me. I'm running the day-to-day operations of our company now. We went through a big change, nothing to do with me and Robert, had to do with other business partners, and not expecting to take it over, but I took it over. That was a couple of years ago. But so I guess the key is you've got to make sure that, I read, I think it was Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he said something about, if you're going to leave, don't leave out of anger, leave out of love, and respect. And so sometimes that, if you're blaming the other person, and I had to look at this myself, what was I blaming Robert for? And when I got down deeper to it, it had nothing to do with blaming Robert. It was other issues involved. So that's all, because I'm in the middle of it right now. We're working through it right now. And the communication seems to be key, and keeping that relationship as healthy as possible was really important. So Robert and I have very, very different roles in the company. And so we work to make sure that those roles are pretty well defined. But again, the biggest lesson for me is to keep the relationship as healthy and amicable as possible. We both do a lot of personal development work on ourselves. That has been a key for us, and keeping the communication strong. And that's where we're at today.
Yeah, no, that's
I
great.
love it. In one of the questions that we ask you for this interview, you talked about transformation, and throughout this entire interview, it's all about transformation, pivoting, growing your portfolio, but your mindset as well. So, what would you say, Kim, are the 4 keys to true transformation?
True transformation. I've been studying this. Adressa. And we've been studying because my girlfriends and I, we're all business owners and investors. We did a product together for women to understand what is most meaningful to them at their core issue, at their core being. And once you understand that, life becomes a lot easier. So in that process, we worked with some people who are very, very knowledgeable in neuroscience. So I always thought the key to transformation was you get some information and then you take action. I thought that was it. Well, there's actually 4 steps. So the first step is, yes, you get some information. The second step is then you've got to take action on it. You've got to put it into practice. And that's where both Liz and you, Adressa, were talking about, you don't want to just analyze and talk about it. You've got to get in the game. So you get some information, then you take action. The third step, which a lot of us ignore, is called feedback. So you put your finger on a hot stove and you burn your finger, that's feedback. If you smile at somebody and they smile back, that's feedback. Well, that also works in the real world. So if you're looking at a property, you put an offer in and the offer isn't accepted, that's feedback. You get to go, okay, so what is this telling me? What do I need to do? What do I need to change? So every single action we take, there's feedback. Every time you're doing something in the real world, you're going to get feedback, but we ignore it. So one of the most important things is to look at that feedback. Sometimes it could be, you make a mistake. The mistake is feedback. What's the lesson of the mistake? So the feedback is real important. And then the 4th step is it's called incubation. And it's where you take that feedback and that learning and you kind of embody it and you take it in cellularly. So we talk about, you could do that through, you take some time for yourself. You journal, you take a walk in the park, in nature, you meditate, whatever it is, to kind of just bring that into your whole being. And so those are the 4 steps from neuroscience that we've discovered. And we actually put it into this product. It's called Her Daring Adventure. It's a lot of fun. And it's for women to really get to who they are at their core and what's most meaningful.
I love it. And Kim, quick question for you. Not quick to answer, but quick question. What is the lesson that is taking you the longest to learn?
The longest to learn? Well, that's a good question, Adressa, because I actually did look at like the highs and lows in my life over my whole lifetime. What are the highs and lows? And they did have something in common. And what they had in common, especially the lows, was I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust what I knew. And I oftentimes would bring in people that I thought were smarter than me, even though I really knew what to do, whether it be in business, whether it be in investing. I knew what to do, but for some reason I doubted myself. I didn't trust myself. And that always blew up. And the highs were the same. The highs were when I did trust myself and I did move forward with what I know. And I don't know everything. And I do need people around me who are smarter than me, of course. But there is something that we all know. We all have a lot of knowledge. And I don't know why I doubted myself for so long. I don't know why I questioned my abilities. But that was the biggest lesson, was to trust myself with what I know Not that I know everything, but trust what I do know in building businesses, in investing, in life generally. I'm
Love
sure
that.
a lot of women can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most women, if not all of them, can relate to that. I certainly can, because you're raising a great point. What a great opportunity for women to take time for this themselves and actually map out their highs and lows.
Yeah.
What a great exercise. That's
I did
immediately where
it.
my head
Yeah, I
my
did
head
it.
went.
Yeah, I
It
did
gives
it.
you this, to your point, the incubation period, right? The feedback and the incubation for transformation, because so many women, especially women in our community, they just go, they get the info in, they take action. The women that we really do surround ourselves they take action, a lot of
Oh,
them,
yeah.
some
They
don't.
have to.
And then they loop that info, action, 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 action. And at the end, they're like, they miss the
Exhausted.
feedback. Yeah, they're exhausted
Yeah.
and they're doing it alone.
Yep.
And then then their lows might override the highs. So great stuff. I think that's a great insight. And I think we need to look at things and have that time for reflection.
We do as women. I mean, we put everybody else first and everything else first. You know, the kids, the family, the husband, the work, the boss, the whatever, the business. We always put everybody first, and we also end up usually being the caregivers of our parents. And we just don't take often enough time for ourselves. And I found that to be one of the keys to my success, is the personal development work that I've been able to do myself.
Yeah. And I love that you're saying that, because of who you are and the greatness that you already embody. This is an ongoing thing. That's not like once you get to a point, you're like, I'm good. Let me check off the personal growth check. I'm doing more work on myself now than I have probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's not easy work, but it's
No.
actually helping me get to where I need to go. Right.
Yeah.
And same with Andressa.
Yeah,
So
'cause
it's not like you get to
guys
this
are
point,
growing
you're like,
every day. You're doing bigger deals, you're doing businesses,
Right.
you're always learning and growing. As long as
yeah,
you're learning and growing, there's more stuff going to come out of here.
that's true.
If you're not doing anything, you don't need personal development, but
Yeah.
you're out there in the real
Turn
world.
this podcast off.
Yeah.
Kim, this has been absolutely amazing. Really, really appreciate your wisdom today and your just amazing words. Where can the women listening learn more about you and follow with all the great stuff you're up to right now?
Well, right now, since it's kind of funny, since I took back the Rich Dad company, it's all at richdad.com. We have a podcast Robert and I do called the Rich Dad Radio Show. So Rich Woman is right now part of richdad.com, which it will stay. But please, you can always reach out. Send any questions you have, because questions that come in, I usually, if I have the time, I will get back to or get the answer that they're looking for. But I really just want to thank you, Liz, and thank you, Andressa, for the work you're doing and for empowering women and educating women. As I said, especially in these times, I don't think there's anything more important right now than education, financial education, investment education, business education, personal education. I think it's crucial right now, because there's so much uncertainty, and I can't control the world economies. I can't control the US economy, any other country, but I can control my own personal economy. And I think that's where women need to get to, and really to take charge of their financial lives and not depend upon somebody else. And women are great at it. They're great at it. They're rock stars. Yeah.
And for all the listeners, all Kim's information you guys can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And the first one, Kim, is what's the most powerful book you ever read? It cannot say Rich Dad for that, because it's been one of the
Powerful.
top one over here.
Wow, the most powerful. Oh, there's so many. I think one of the earliest books I read, and it was on the mindset. It was called As a Man Thinketh, and it was written by I think his name is Alan. His last name Alan. Old book, goes back way very far.
James Allen, I think. Yeah.
James Allen. That was it. Yeah, that got me thinking about the mindset. And then my sister, when I was 18, she sent me Your Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer. And that got me here thinking again. So I guess the most powerful books are the ones that are addressing here, because once you handle the mind, the doingness becomes a whole lot easier. This is what gets in my way all the time. This is what gets in my way. It's not how do I do a deal? How do I do a bigger deal? That I can learn from other people and that I can learn from experience. But this has got to get out of my way. Otherwise, it'll stop me from doing what I want to do.
Wonderful. The second question is, what's the most transformational routine that you do to create and live a financially free and balanced life?
Okay. Oh, I have one other book for you, by the way. It's a marketing book. It's a marketing book called Influence by that name is Robert Cialdini. It's a great marketing book anyway, because I love marketing. Marketing is my thing. So my transformational routine, every morning, I do my best to make it every morning. I read from one of my spiritual books. Then I journal, do a little journaling, just maybe a question I have or something that I read and I want to kind of be introspective about it. And then typically what I read that morning, I put into practice for the day. So, I read a lot about being present because I'm not always very present. So I practice being present during the day, or I practice gratitude during the day. I just read a fun little book, and it talked about before you get out of bed, as you're waking up, and before you get out of bed, think of in your mind the 10 things you're most grateful for. It helps with that. So those things I do every day, and that sets the tone for my day instead of getting out of bed and making my coffee and rushing to my computer. And then I'm like frazzled. I just need that. That's the me time we were talking about.
Awesome. And the last question is, which women, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
Well, I know this kind of sounds cliche, but my mom, and I'll tell you why. She was such a great role model for me. As I said, I was the youngest of 3 girls. When I was 9 years old, my mom said to me, Kim, if you don't want to spend your life in the kitchen, don't learn how to cook. And then she said, and this was years ago when before computers, and women were oftentimes secretaries. And she said, and if you don't want to be a secretary, don't learn how to type. And I looked at her and I'm like, what she was saying, she was like, don't limit yourself by these stigma of being a woman. You can be anything you want. You don't have to fall into this category. You don't have to fall into this routine. You can be whatever you want. And to this day, I still do not cook.
Well, something the 3 of us have in common.
Yes.
Good.
Amen to that.
I'm good with takeout. So she was a great role model. And then there was a golfer. Oh, I'm trying to think of her name. It was a golf, because I love golf, but there was a golfer, and she was what's her name? Babe Diedrichsen. And she was years and years ago, and she kind of broke the stigma of women in golf. And she was one of the pioneers. So she always stuck out in my mind. And my mom was a fan of hers, and so she would have me read about her. So yeah.
Love that.
I love the underdogs. I love the underdogs too. The underdogs that come up and make it.
Yeah. I love that. Kim, thank you so much for being on our show, for sharing your wisdom, sharing yourself with our community and on our podcast here. So we just so appreciate you and your time.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Adressa. And again, thanks for the work you're doing. It's so needed today. And I so admire the 2 of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.